The Hunter Biden laptop is confirmed by none other than Hunter Biden himself. Well, really his lawyers. They sent 4 different letters that we know of, we'll come back to that, to a bunch of people you're probably familiar with. You ever heard of the U.S. Department of Justice? Oh, yeah. That's the agency that is under the executive branch. Guess who runs the executive branch? Oh, that's right. Hunter Biden's daddy, Joe Biden. So he sent a letter to an agency that his daddy runs. That's nice. It's involving John Paul Mac Isaac, which is the owner of that laptop repair store that Hunter Biden apparently confirms he forgot his laptop at. And they're asking the DOJ to go and investigate that man for illegally converting the laptop hard drive. They want criminal prosecutions. That's why they're demanding this is looked into. We've also got Delaware. They sent a letter, Hunter's lawyers, over to the Delaware Attorney General, basically asking for a state level version of the same claims. We have a letter that went over to Tucker Carlson and Fox News saying that they were airing this illegally obtained laptop, and they also must stop and cease and desist and all the things. And then they go after our friends over at Marco Polo and Garrett Ziegler, who was on this channel where we had a very deep dive and went through their report over at MarcoPoloUSA.org, which is where you can go and get a copy of the laptop report, which is now available in paperback. I bought my copy today. I don't know if you did, but you should. It's outstanding. So it is at MarcoPoloUSA.org. They are going to be sort of the subject of a request by Hunter's lawyers to remove their nonprofit status. These people are despicable, which is why they're going after every little facet of the opposition. So we're going to go through each one of those letters. We'll hear from reaction from the White House, from Ron Klain, from Ted Cruz. But first, let's start with the question that comes in from the media to start this segment off. And it goes to Karine Jean-Pierre. Feels a little bit strange that Joe Biden is the president of the United States, right? He runs the executive branch. And all of these agencies are sub-agencies, or sort of in his cabinet, many of them. And Hunter is the president's son. Okay, so his lawyers are sending letters basically to his daddy complaining about his laptop that he left somewhere else, that the FBI, mind you, was in possession of, some people say as far back as December 2019, and they did nothing with. Let's go through this. So the question comes in from the media. Before we go through everything, I want to make sure we highlight 2 important concepts. One, this is a major conflict of interest, right? And Hunter knows this. It's one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. Say what you want about Trump's kids or whatever, but did they ever send a letter to Attorney General Bill Barr? Daddy, can you help me? Somebody found my crackhead hooker laptop hard drive. Can you help me, Trump? No, they never did that. It's embarrassing. And it's also a major conflict of interest. That's one. Point 2, they also lied about this. Joe Biden told us that this was totally fake. It was Russian disinformation. We've got a montage of that. And point 3, I've got questions about other letters that were sent out. Where did other letters go? We know that this one only went to the DOJ, Delaware, Tucker Carlson, and Department of Treasury. But I guarantee you that's not the end of it. These lawyers are going to say, hey, Hunter, how much of that Burisma money you still got left? How much of that, whatever that money you got from China, how much of that is still in your bank account? Perfect. We've got a bunch of additional letters to send. And so I can almost guarantee you they're going to the big tech platforms. They're going to Facebook and Google, and they're going to Twitter, and they're saying, you're posting hacked materials. Your users, Rob Govea on YouTube, are posting illegal conversations with Garrett Ziegler, and they're talking about this illegal stuff, right? They're going to be trying to suppress this. In other words, this whole strategy is now a full frontal attack against anybody who is challenging the Hunter team. It's kind of nuts that they're doing this, given the conflict of interest and given the open dishonesty that they've already laid down before revealing this to the rest of us, confirming it openly in letters. So the big question goes to Karine. Hey, Karine, Hunter sent letters to his daddy. Don't you think that's a little bit strange that the president's son is sending letters to the president?
Counsel for Hunter Biden has written the National Security Division of the Justice Department. I know you like to keep that agency very arm's length. But is it arm's length when the president's son writes DOJ seeking an investigation?
I mean, look, I'm going to be pretty consistent, as I have been from this podium when it relates to that particular question that you're asking me. We have been for the last 2 years.
Anything related to Hunter goes to Hunter.
And I will say to you that that is something for Hunter Biden's personal representative, their representative, to speak to. I'm just not going to speak to it from here.
We're not asking about Hunter's position on it. The letter went to your government there, Karine. Joe Biden's the president. He runs the executive branch. That's where the DOJ is. Hello. So what is the White House's posture on this? Do you just take random letters from random civilians? I mean, is this a thing that the White House does? They just say, if you have a complaint about something, you can just send it over to the White House, to the DOJ. We're going to go through all the letters. Are you okay with this? Are you giving this higher priority because it's the president's little baby, the smartest man he knows? Is he giving preferential treatment because of any of this? So you have an obligation to comment on this crap there, Karine. You can't just pump this off to Hunter. This is a little bit different, even though not really, than Hunter money laundering through his artwork, right? Little bit different. At least you can fake this. You can say, well, he's an artist now. He's a very sophisticated artist in, George S. Burgess Gallery and wherever. This is different. He's asking your government to do something. Hunter came in and sent a letter to the DOJ saying, prosecute somebody. What's your position on that? Can I send a letter? Because I would like to send a letter to the US DOJ and say, Hunter Biden's a criminal. Can you please prosecute him for robbing this country? I wonder how that would go.
The White House knew about before it happened?
Again, I would, as far as that piece, I would refer you to the White House counsel.
Why? To the White House counsel. It has to do with your government. It's going to the DOJ. It's going to the Department of Treasury and so on. So put that pin in your quill or hat or something, whatever they put that thing when, you know what I'm talking about. There's also something else that I want to highlight as we go through these letters. Joe Biden was dishonest about this. Hunter Biden presumably knew that this laptop hard drive was his, was accurate, was honestly, the legitimate reporting that came out was actually legitimate. And they lied to all of us for a long time. And they used these lies to suppress the story, as we've seen in the Twitter files and elsewhere. But Joe Biden in particular lied many, many times. So these letters are illustrating the sheer dishonesty that they were perpetuating throughout the entire campaign cycle and beyond.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
Okay, but it obviously wasn't a bunch of garbage. And Joe Biden could have just called up Hunter and just say, hey, son, there's a story about a laptop floating around out there. There's all these weird photographs of you and these underage women. I don't know. What can you tell me? Is this true? And what's he going to say? Well, Dad, no, it's not true, right? It's not true at all. And so that must be what he said. And so is Joe Biden standing by his liar son? Or did the son tell him the truth and Joe Biden lied to us? We don't know. But we really don't even have any part of that conversation in this dialogue. It's weird that Joe Biden, I didn't catch this when this was all unfolding back at the time. But why didn't he just say that? Why does he have to defer over to 50-something so-called intelligence people who have no intelligence whatsoever, obviously, because they were dead wrong about it, and they have no integrity to come back and own their mistakes? Why did he have to refer to them? Why couldn't he just say, I literally talked to Hunter. He said it's not his laptop, okay? He was in Idaho that time, okay? He was hiking around. He wasn't even in the, there was none of that. He had to defer to other people. Why? Because he knows it's full of crap. He knows this is a lie. And he was lying to us when he was saying this stuff. He knows his son has a big problem. He knows, or he's beyond, even more incompetent than we could even fathom, to not recognize, after a history of drug problems and abuse and all sorts of other scandals within their family household, that this wouldn't bubble up into a bigger problem. Here's more.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
All of that was a total lie. Totally. There was no Russian involvement in any of that. That was a real laptop.
Stories from the fall about your son Tucker were Russian disinformation at its near.
Office of the president-elect. So before the election, after the election, just laughing it off.
Yes. I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's a last-ditch effort, and it's desperate.
Yeah, so Joe Biden is just a giant liar, obviously, right? So they were dishonest about this. There was a conflict of interest in the son complaining to daddy president to fix these problems for him. I'm guessing there are many, many other letters that are floating around out there as well that are acting to suppress these stories. And it's going to be very interesting to see where they're going and why they're going to certain people. This is a major strategy shift for the White House. I got to imagine that Hunter and his counsel are communicating with White House counsel, and they're all involved in this. So this isn't about face, right? This is a pivot from where they were just trying to ignore this story and kind of hope it goes away. I don't know why they're making this change. They may be expecting charges coming down the pike. There may be, something that they know that we don't know, which is why they are strategically going on the offensive. There may, maybe another shoe to drop, and they are trying to pre-butt whatever it is coming to try to chill some of the speech, to chill some of the coverage. Let's go through some of the letters so we can see exactly what they're asking for. We're going to start with the U.S. Department of Justice. This was a letter, as you can see, February 1, 2023. The law firm is Winston and Strawn. The partner drafting this is Abe Lowell. And this is on behalf of Hunter Biden. You can see this letter is going over to the National Security Division from the Department of Justice. Okay, just to be ultra clear about this. We've talked about this fellow before, Matthew Olson, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. And they've had a lot of conversations with the Judiciary Committees and the Intelligence Committees. Matthew Olson, we've seen on all sorts of briefs on criminal filings. We've seen his name all over the place. So just to be clear, this is Hunter Biden's lawyers. We write on behalf of our client, Hunter Biden, and they're sending this letter over to the DOJ. Okay. Hunter Biden is the son of President Biden, who is the chief executive of this country, who runs the DOJ. So little son is complaining to President Daddy. It's really embarrassing, to be perfectly honest. All legal things aside, forget legal analysis, forget all the red pen, all the document that we're going to talk about. It's just embarrassing. As like a person of integrity. It's just embarrassing. Let's see what it says. We write on behalf of our client, Robert, to his daddy to request an investigation into the following individuals who are hurting our feelings, saying they violated federal law. The individuals are John Paul Mac Isaac of Delaware, Robert Costello, New York, Rudy Giuliani, Steve Bannon, Jack Maxey, Garrett Ziegler of Illinois, and Yaakov of XR Vision in New York. Right, all of these people now, and again, this is not a private citizen who's saying I was charged. Somebody broke my civil rights somewhere. This is Hunter Biden. Okay, as we have seen from the laptop, who by many estimates, we'll say, just to be very generous and fair to him, there's good evidence. But we'll say clear and convincing, maybe not even beyond a reasonable doubt, but pretty clear and convincing evidence that Hunter Biden was put in positions of power that he had no right to be in. He was given gobs of money for expertise he didn't have, and he was essentially selling access, by his own words, saying that he wouldn't have been in these positions had his name not been a Biden, right? He was trading on his family name. He was getting tons of money, exploiting America, filling his bank accounts up. And now, when all of those misdeeds have been exposed, everybody gets to see it on full display because this idiot left his laptop at a laptop repair center. And the FBI took it, and John Paul Mac Isaac was trying to sort of cooperate with the government. And then finally, he turned it over to the Trump campaign. And now Hunter's gonna cry foul, and he's going to take the very money and funds and power that he's accumulated exploiting the American people and his daddy's exploitation of the American people, and take that money and then demand that the people who exposed him be prosecuted by his very daddy in this government. It's one of the most corrupt, disgusting things you've ever seen. I can't believe they put it in writing, to be honest with you. It's so embarrassing. These people exposed him. They're essentially like whistleblowers, right? Of showing all of his misdeeds, these emails and all of this disgusting behavior. All of it was covered up. It exposes the Democratic Party, and his lawyers have the gall to send a letter saying that they should all be investigated. Are you joking? Holy moly. All right. The government should investigate the unauthorized access, copying, and dissemination of Biden's personal information. They say John Paul Mac Isaac unlawfully accessed the personal data. And he's admitted that. They say, yeah, he's admitted to gaining access without his consent. And I think that would be debatable, right? I think that he would say that when you turn your property in, you sign it over here. If you abandon and don't pick up your stuff, you turn it over to our company. He admitted to copying the data without Biden's consent. And so take all these with a grain of salt, right? This is all some, lawyer somewhere who is hyper conjugating the language in order to serve his ends. But I think the response from Isaac, if he were here, would say, no, when I took hit, like when he signed to have me repair his laptop, I made him sign a waiver of liability or whatever. And that was enough to insulate me and immunize me from that claim. Anyways, he's admitted to distributing property without his consent. You're going to see this a lot. Nobody cares because it was abandoned property. That's what they're saying. These unlawful action caused the widespread publication, manipulation, and exploitation of Biden's most personal information. So there you go. Bingo, right? That's his laptop. They're confirming everything on there is now his. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be complaining about this. They say toward the end of the 2020 presidential election, Mr. Mac chose to work with Trump and Trump's lawyers to weaponize Mr. Biden's personal computer against his father by unlawfully causing the provision of his personal data going over to the New York Post. They called this a failed, dirty political trick. It was news. It was October. It's an October surprise. That's what happens every time. And by the way, actually, that was a repeat. You can rewind the clock back to 2016. They were trying to basically plant a fake story on Trump with the Hillary Clinton campaign. And Jake Sullivan, who is now Joe Biden's national security advisor. Okay, it's a one big, disgusting, incestuous thing. Mr. Mac Isaac, they say his intentional, reckless, likely unlawful conduct, unlikely to be, allowed for hundreds of gigabytes that he's owning now of Biden's personal data to be circulated around the internet. Politicians in the news media have used this unlawfully accessed copied to harm Mr. Biden. They say that he's admitted to repeatedly accessing the personal data. So they're going after the Mac repair store owner specifically here, saying that he readily admits his intrusion, that he got access to certain files. They say that at a certain time he wrote that he accessed 2013, 2014, 2015. Next year, he saw some additional materials about tax records. He says backing up his files for repair did not require him to review the contents. Yeah, but what he would say is that he didn't do that in order to back up the files, right? He went through the materials. Yeah, he went through the materials after the laptop was abandoned. He was going through them after he was trying to sort of recover the data and figure out whose laptop, where to do, what to do with this thing, essentially. He conceded it was none of his business. Yeah. In failed attempts to justify his unlawful access, they say he was very inconsistent in some of his stories. He doesn't really have any obligation to be. He's got no duty to you. They say his vision is impaired. They say that he claimed that he could not positively identify the person who came in April and left 3 devices. But then he switched his story and he said, oh, now I'm 100% sure. Okay, well, what does that have to do with anything? I guess they're saying that it was a fraudulent disclosure. So it's either he disclosed it or he didn't disclose it. Whether he could identify the person who dropped it off is not really relevant, I don't think. It might go to the credibility of the source of the files, but nobody's really questioning that. I mean, everybody questioned it except the people who could see it. The other people out there in the media just believe those 51 so-called intelligence people. So this goes on. It says, Mr. Mac unlawfully shared Biden's property with third parties, sent it in different places. They say that without Mr. Biden's consent, obviously, he sent a hard drive containing the data to Delaware to Mr. Mac Isaac's father, and they actually secreted it in an old Garfield stuffed animal. That's hilarious. So they were freaked out, man. So Mac Isaac, he's like, oh gosh, I've got Hunter's laptop. He calls Dad. Hey, Dad, guess what? Got the Hunter's laptop here, the hard drive. What's on it? He goes, you don't even want to know, Dad. I know you've been around a block, but trust me, you don't want to see this stuff. And he ships it to him via UPS and says, stuff this away somewhere where you can't find it. And he finds an old Garfield stuffed animal, which is a good comic, of course. Isaac appears to have given another copy to a journalist, Ronald Scott Jr., also gave one to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, Robert Costello. Then there were some other additional hard drives that were shared. There was a Biden laptop from Hell Rally that was sponsored in Oklahoma. Several thumb drives went out back then. You can see they want the DOJ to investigate Robert Costello, which is a lawyer. In August, they say Mr. Mack sent this over via FedEx to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. Costello admitted that he almost immediately accessed the material without permission to do so. Beyond reviewing the files, he said, oh, you feel like a voyeur. You're seeing the hard drive as a political weapon. Yeah, of course it was. And so he shared it with Rudy Giuliani, and then Rudy Giuliani shared it with the newspaper. They also want prosecution of Rudy Giuliani. They say Rudy also got a copy of this. And working with his friend and top aide, they gave a copy to Garrett Ziegler, who we're going to talk about soon, over at MarcoPoloUSA.org, where you can go support with your contributions. And a former aide to Trump, Giuliani, provided a copy over to the New York Post, and Biden did not consent to any of them having that. They also want Bannon investigated, saying that Bannon had some of this stuff and he gave some of the data to a Chinese billionaire called Gao Wengwei. Mr. Wengwei sent files on WhatsApp, right? So everybody's spreading the files around. Garrett Ziegler, who is a friend of this channel, who did a great interview with us here, which is linked in the description below. As stated above, they say that he was an aide, and he uploaded to the files, or the content of the files, to MarcoPoloUSA.org, where you can go and get a copy of the full laptop report, which you should. Jack Maxey, in December 2020, made and stole another copy of the data from a hard drive that Mr. Bannon possessed. They say stole, which is their nice conjugation of it. So they copied it and sent it to Republican members of Congress like Matt Gaetz. They want him investigated too. And they also sent it to the media, the Washington Post and the Daily Mail. Do they want them prosecuted? Are they going to be in here? Do you think that they want the Washington Post prosecuted or the Daily Mail prosecuted? Or no, they didn't put their names in here, did they? No, they didn't. They put Garrett Ziegler's name in here and Steve Bannon's name because these are partisan hacks. Mr. Maxey, alleging concern for his own safety, went to Switzerland and then disseminated more information there. And Yakov is the creator of XR Vision, and he was working with another senator, Senator Ron Johnson. All right, so they're also swinging after senators here. All right. The government should investigate manipulation of the data. They're saying, Daddy, can you please help us? We're very mad that my crackhead son's Hunter laptop is now disseminating all over the place. Can you please bring in the DOJ to fix this for us? Evaluating the data, they say that the hard drive was reported all over the place. They're saying that there were anomalies in the data, right? And this was when they were all saying that they couldn't report on any of this. The Washington Post and everybody was twisting themselves into a pretzel to say, no, we've examined this, and it looks like Russian disinformation to us. They reported here, right? Yeah, they reported on September 1 and September 2, 2020, the months leading right up to the election in November coming up. September, October, November. So on September 1st and 2nd, they're reporting, oh no, we've investigated this file and it looks very, very problematic. Of course they did, because they didn't want to publish the story. They were all trying to spike this. They say the Washington Post reported that since 2019, they've determined that other people were able to access the files, right? So they couldn't talk about it. Mr. Mack copied the material he initially copied in 2019. He also attempted to turn it over to the FBI, who presumably did nothing with it. Former Trump aide Garrett Ziegler published the files, text messages and other things that came from the hard drive. They say that Mr. Mack was talking about how he cloned the hard drive. He says he did not make a bit-by-bit copy or a clone, nor could he make a copy because the hard drive was soldered to the laptop's motherboard and you cannot stay logged into the waterlogged laptop long enough to copy the entirety of the hard drive. So because the laptop would just keep shorting out. So they say he chose what he wanted. So okay, so it's sort of like the evidence is problematic because he didn't copy the entire hard drive. They also say that the government should investigate what Mac Isaac said to Congress when he was there testifying, saying he was dishonest to Congress. So they want him, sort of charged for perjury or something like that. Here are the different charges they want to see. So for Bannon, for Ziegler, for Mac, for everybody. This, again, Hunter Biden and his lawyers are complaining to his own dad's Department of Justice to prosecute his political enemies, the people who have embarrassed him by releasing his own hard drive that he abandoned, that's not even his property, that exposes crimes that he committed exploiting the American people, robbing the taxpayer, and trading on his family's name, peddling influence for the last however many decades. He's now complaining that he's been exposed. Please charge them with the crime after all of this. Can you believe this guy? Computer fraud and abuse. He says, this makes it a crime to intentionally access all of this. The facts here merit further investigation into whether computer fraud was violated. We also have the Stored Communications Act. They're referencing 18 U.S. Code 2701. Saying this was accessed and so on. Electronic storage is defined as follows, and we believe that was violated. They also say the National Stolen Property Act. Whoever transports or transmits or transfers in interstate or foreign commerce any goods is guilty of a crime. Right? All the different elements. They say here, Mac did that exact same thing. He caused a computer to be transported in interstate commerce, at least 2 external hard drives containing all the data. He also knew that the property was more than $5,000, and he made a certain amount of money from peddling that information. They also say violates 18 U.S. Code 119, making personal information public. And this is knowingly and publicly available, and so on and so forth. They say that he's covered by all of this. They say the DOJ has prosecuted people under similar circumstances. Similarly, in a practice called doxing, on Wikipedia, they say the defendant was convicted of violating different codes and sentenced to different years in prisons. Therefore, as documented, Biden's lawyers, Abe David Lowell, counsel for Robert Hunter Biden, the president's pathetic son, says as follows. Furthermore, as documented in various publications, many of the individuals named in this letter have admitted their actions would harm Biden or his family. Yeah, it's the exposure of Hunter's actions that would harm Mr. Biden or his family. You're missing a key point to this. The exposure of Hunter's actions. So they weren't the ones who exploited America and traded on the Biden name and funneled 10% off for the big guy. It wasn't Garrett Ziegler who did that, okay? That was Hunter Biden. All they did was expose it. To coin Steve Bannon's excuse, they thought it was war, they said. All right. The actions described above merit a full investigation, and depending on the facts, they may merit prosecution under various statutes. It's not a common thing for a private person and his counsel to seek to have someone else investigated, but the actions and motives here require it. Yeah, it is not a common thing. This is not a common thing for a private person and his counsel to sort of request charges. This is really, really pathetic. I can't even explain it. It's like, it's actually unbelievable. And his dad runs the DOJ. It's one of the most pathetic things I think we've talked about here in terms of like weak kind of just complainy. It's just not manly behavior at all, right? It's just not. And I know that is a gender term and I probably going to get nuked off YouTube for that, but it's really not. It's just kind of like, whoa, are you serious right now? Your dad's the president, bro. You're sending letters like this. You want the DOJ, which your daddy runs, to go after a guy like Garrett Ziegler? You piece of what? All right. So that's what the letter says. Now, they've got some exhibits, that they're attaching here of what JP Mac was posting on Getter and other locations. So it's just It's just pathetic. It's one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. So it's perfect, right? It's absolutely to form for Hunter Biden. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, it does surprise me the level of how pathetic this actually is, but I guess it shouldn't because it is Hunter Biden we're talking about. All right, so something very similar is also going to the state. So we'll fly through this one. Okay, it's very similar. I don't want to spend too much time on John Paul Mac Isaac, but just briefly, there are two layers here. So they're asking the federal DOJ at a federal level to investigate federal level crimes, which is why when we went through that prior letter, it was all U.S. code violations, right? 18, whatever U.S. code, whatever the statute was. I think we talked 4 or 5 of them were in there. They're going to ask for the parallel charges in the state level criminal statutes. They're going to say those apply. And so we'll take a look at this one briefly before we turn our attention over to what they sent over to Tucker Carlson and Fox News for exposing them. And finally, what they sent over to our friend Marco Polo at marcopousa.org. So let's go over through this Delaware letter to the AG. It's very similar to what we saw. It's another 14-pager, but it's mostly the same, structure, so we can go through it quickly. But again, absolutely pathetic. This is the president's son, the president of the country, sending a letter to the attorney general, somebody named Kathy, the attorney general of Delaware, which again, I'm sure that Joe Biden, for his 30 years, has a lot of sway in Delaware. Okay, a lot. I can't even imagine what it's like, because I know what McCain land was like in Arizona. Remember that, my fellow Arizonans? When McCain was running stuff around here, it was nuts. It was like, it was ridiculous, honestly. But the same thing is, I would imagine, going on in Delaware, especially the fact that daddy is the president. So what kind of pressure? I don't even know who Kathy Jennings is. Don't even care. But what do you think the kind of pressure is coming down to bear upon her on what to do with this whole thing? It's like nuts. So she basically has to prosecute these people because the president's son is knocking on her door. And these lawyers are writing another pathetic letter. Dear Attorney General Jennings, our little whiner client called Robert Hunter Biden, loser, is here requesting an investigation into the following individuals. And we already talked about all those people. Now, it's the same thing, right? More or less is going to be a copy and paste version of this. So we can sort of fly through it. Let's see what the actual criminal statutes look like. Yeah, same thing. Old Garfield statute pops up again here. These lawyers are, I wonder if they're going to bill Hunter for a rewrite, or if they're just going to, copy and paste the bill for a copy and paste. Probably a rewrite. So you can see the different local level state violations are here. Under 11 Delaware Code, Section 935, they write misuse of a computer system. So they want all of those same people to be also charged with state level crimes. They say, same thing. It sort of mirrors the federal statutes. They want Mac Isaac, they want Costello, Giuliani, and Ziegler, and they want Applebaum, all of them brought under criminal investigation for these statutes. Similarly, 11 Section 940, another one called unauthorized access to a computer system, 11 Delaware Code 932. They say the facts and circumstances say that Mac Isaac and others committed these crimes, right? Section 932, admitting to transferring the data. Another section called destruction of computer equipment, saying they recklessly caused or tampering with some of the, hard drives. Theft of computer services. They say that Mac and Applebaum were not authorized to do this, that, or the other. Okay. This is what these lawyers are doing. This is very expensive work, and you got to find the right lawyers to do this. There's not a lot of lawyers who I think would be willing to sort of take on this type of a very unusual request and literally file a complaint on behalf of the president's son. Nuts. Theft. They say they should be investigated for theft, also possession of stolen property, also misapplication of another's property. And they say, look, as documented, they copy and pasted this too, it is not a common thing for a private person and his counsel to seek someone else being investigated, but the actions and motives here require it. Attorney Jennings, much of the conduct here has been admitted to. The laws of Delaware readily apply here. The actions were intended to have caused our client harm, and we ask that you please acknowledge this receipt of this request. We can supplement this letter with additional materials and would be happy to answer any questions you have. Counsel Abe Lowell. counsel for Robert Hunter. Same addendum there, right? So that's going to Delaware now, and that's a state level. So now, right, all these people who are the subject of these letters are now facing, what a disgusting country Joe Biden is turning this into. It is a situation where Hunter is in a position where he can use the strong arm of the federal government to go after the people who have exposed him. And the pressure is so high and heavy that it's very likely that he's going to get his way. Now, Tucker Carlson and Marco Polo and Garrett Ziegler also got letters. And we're going to go through them in detail because what they're also trying to do is chill speech. Tucker Carlson shared the story. Marco Polo drafted the laptop report, which you can read at marcopolousa.org and get your copy of the hard drive, or a copy, not of the hard drive, but you can get a copy of the report, which you can purchase in hard copy. It's well worth it. But before we take a look at the Tucker Carlson letter and we check in with what is happening to Garrett Ziegler, we're going to need to fortify ourselves in the face of this disgusting story about corruption at the highest levels. And in order to do that, we have to keep our energy high, our weight low, and our bodies fortified. One way to do that is with Field of Greens. And also, Field of Greens is very good. It helps you lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, how sick are you of all those ads for weight loss, pills, and fad diets? You've all been there, and we've done that, and they don't work. But you know what does work? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and I imagine the weight would probably just fall right off. But hey, you got vegetables, and not a fan of those, and you don't have time to eat fruit all day every day. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. You'll look and feel healthier, but the great proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight and you look fabulous. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started with 15% off your first order. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert to save 15% off your first order. Get your real organic superfood from my friends at Field of Greens and save 15% off with code Robert. And you'll be bursting with green energy. Bursting at the seams with vibrance. And so let's take our attention now over to Fox News. Tucker Carlson also got a letter from Hunter Biden's lawyers. They're complaining. They're saying, you exposed our client. We're very offended. We're going to do stuff to you now. This is coming over from another law firm, Early, Sullivan, Wright, Geiser, and McRae. Drafted February 1st via FedEx. They say, oh, dear Mr. Tucker Carlson, and also Fox News. We're writing to you about defamatory statements that your host posted on his very popular show. And they say, all right, dear Mr. Carlson and Mr. Googer, we represent Hunter in connection with false and defamatory statements made by Tucker on his show about Biden paying, quote, rent to his father, Joseph Biden, in what Mr. Carlson implied was essentially a money laundering scheme to finance Biden's lifestyle prior to his election as president. And say that in speculating that he had unauthorized access to classified documents because of his proximity to the House. Biden's lawyers say that Fox News encouraged and consented to and ratified Tucker's theory and the rent story. Other conservatives also did. Notably, but other conservative entities have already retracted the rent story, including the Daily Caller. We demand, they say Tucker Carlson, we demand that you immediately retract these statements by spending a significant amount of airtime on such retraction. For example, stating the assertions were wrong and what other media like Glenn Kessler of the Washington Post, which that's a hilarious source for that one, Glenn Kessler. Like he of the Washington Post reported that this was false. They say that here's the reasons why this was false. And here's what Tucker said, apparently. They write in their letter that Tucker apparently said something like, in 2018, Hunter Biden was looking to rent property in California. And on the form, he said he was paying $50,000 a month. Where'd the money come from, is what Tucker said. Now, these statements were false and had no factual support whatsoever, they say. Indeed, the falsity of these statements were reported in the Washington Post. In this article, a real reporter who actually checks facts. Oh, they're throwing elbows at Tucker. A real reporter who actually checks facts. Who's he talking about? Glenn Kessler? Unlike Mr. Carlson and Fox News, detailed that the statements were based on a tweet from an anonymous Twitter user and a report of the tweet. It was retweeted by Miranda Devine. Mr. Devine modified her earlier tweet, said he may be referring to rent on his house. The next day, there was a correction. Okay, yeah. So they say Tucker flagrantly violated journalistic professionalism, intentionally ignored the cautionary tweets about this being wild speculation, and ran with the story anyways. They say thereafter, Fox News doubled down on the story, including other guest hosts, including Jeanine Pirro, John Roberts, and Sean Hannity. They all dumped onto this. They say, shockingly, Fox News continued to press this ridiculous story, even after Breitbart pulled back from the original story, so they're very upset about a version of the reporting. In addition, the information for the wildly speculative rent story is also unconfirmed, and Hannity relied on it too. They say under California law, these are the rules. Any publication that is false, defamatory, unprivileged, natural tendency to cause injury is actionable. And they say that Tucker admitting that this was wild speculation, on and on and on, is going to increase his viewership and drive ratings and revenue from advertising dollars, but it's not going to be in comportment with the truth. It's going to be a reckless disregard, and he needs to pay for it. So they say, all right, dear Tucker and your team, as a result of Carlson and Fox News and their actions described above, both Carlson and Fox News are clearly liable. And I had a professor who said, don't use that word in your legal writing. Don't use the word clearly in your legal writing. So I think that's actually good advice. For defamation in violation of California law, and Mr. Biden has been significantly damaged. We therefore demand that Fox News have Mr. Carlson and all other Fox News commentators spend the same amount of airtime retracting the so-called story by 1, stating that the information underlying the so-called rent story was unreliable, stating that the rent story was wild speculation, again saying the same thing, stating that the Daily Caller said more reporting should have been done, and also stating that they didn't do fact-checking before saying wild speculation. We demand that Mr. Carlson and Fox News, by no later than the close of business on February 2nd, that's today. Wow, they gave him 1 day? Holy moly, look at this. This letter came out on February 1. They said, you better respond to us by February 2. That's today. Who do these people think they are? Good Lord. We demand written confirmation that they will comply with these demands. They better not negotiate with these terrorists. 1 day demand letter? Weirdos. God. If we do not receive this written confirmation, I guess within 24 hours, or else we're going to murder your puppy or something, we will assume that you are both not interested in acting responsibly and professionally and willing to reverse its actual malice reporting. And we will take all steps necessary to protect Mr. Biden's rights. Should litigation then ensue, given the lack of original basis, the retraction of other outlets, and our pointing out the errors again here, we would seek regular damages and attorney's fees and costs. Furthermore, Tucker and Fox, since you are both now on notice of potential litigation, we demand that you both take all necessary steps to preserve all of your communication. Don't destroy anything. This includes all internal emails, blah, blah, blah. This letter is not intended as a full recitation of the facts or a complete review of the applicable law. Nothing contained in or omitted from this letter is or should be deemed to be a limitation, restriction of any waiver. We're going to cover our monetary damages. Very truly yours, Brian M. Sullivan of Early Sullivan, Wright, Geisler, and McRae. All right, well, this letter was worse than the first one. This other law firm's a little bit better, I'll say. I like this law firm's a little bit better. Winston and Strawn, much better drafted complaint on that one. But of course, it's different. These are people who are, I don't know what Winston and Strawn is, but this one's different. Yeah, this is a defamation complaint. And Tucker and his lawyers should have some fun with that one. I mean, we'll see what they do. I'd love to see their response. I really hope the Tucker people post their response to that, but that should be fun. So we'll continue to cover that part of it. Now, lastly, our final letter from Hunter Biden's little whiner lawyers said the following. This one's going over to the Department of Treasury. The Department of Treasury. And of course, they're going after Marco Polo. Now, we've had a long conversation here with Marco Polo. The link is down in the description below. His name is Garrett Ziegler, and they've got a team over there. And so make sure you go and support them. And I mean this seriously. Like, stop whatever you're doing, open up a new tab, and go check them out, right? MarcoPoloUSA.org. It's a nonprofit. They wrote a report on the laptop, and so you can get a hard copy of the report. I ordered mine today, and you can go there and purchase a copy, right? And if you missed the interview with Garrett Ziegler, I would really encourage you to check that out. And like I said, support them. If you don't want the book, go make a dono to them, right? They're funded by your support. So they're going to need it. They're going to need some work. They're going to need counsel. They're going to need, some additional funding. So I'm really urging you to go support them. This is how you can help. All right. So this is also the letter that they got. Now, what they're trying to do is go after their nonprofit status because they are sneaky little snakes. Let's see what they wrote here. On February 1st, 2023, Hunter Biden's little whine lawyer, maybe the lawyers aren't as whiny, but their clients are certainly whining. Hunter is a whiner. And he is filing this or sending this on February 1st. They write, to Mr. Robert Malone, not that guy, the other one from the IRS, the worst one. Although we love the IRS here on this channel. Director, tax-exempt organizations here. Request of review of the 501c3 status. This is the status of Marco Polo. And again, they're writing on behalf of Robert Hunter Biden. And where is this going? To the IRS. I mean, even if you're like an ultra Democrat out there, and you're like you're a Hunter Biden super fan, you're like, Sam Harris, who doesn't care if he has dead kids in basements or something, if you're that type of like super ultra Hunter fan. Are you cool with him sending a complaint letter to the IRS? Like, seriously? Is anybody out there, are you cool with him complaining to the IRS? Like, is that the type of person you are? You say, that's a great idea. Yeah, what you're okay with writing a complaint letter to the IRS? Okay, that's all right. I guess. All right, well, okay. Here is what the letter says. We write on behalf of our client, Robert Hunter Biden, to challenge the tax-exempt status of Marco Polo. They say it was formed as a certain entity originally some time ago, and they say it's now being disguised as a charitable organization. They say that Garrett makes public appearances, and he did. He came on this channel, and we did talk about the laptop report, which was an excellent report that I referred you to. He gave other speeches, and he's a very excellent communicator, serving as keynote speaker, Republican Party Christmas gala, doing all sorts of other things. Posting on social media platforms, conducting interviews. They say they don't like the compensation structure or earnings. They're just basically unhappy with this entity and how it's created. And so they say that they want a review of their exempt status. They're literally complaining like little hall monitors to the IRS, whining to their daddy's executive branch institution to go and go after their critics. The document is signed at a certain location. They're actually challenging like the formation, the filing structure. Yeah, amazing. And so they're following up. A review of this and Mr. Ziegler's operations say that he doesn't deserve the exempt status and he should forfeit their benefits through inaction for using the organization outside of the proper purview. Please acknowledge receipt of this letter and do not hesitate to contact me should you have any questions about this request. Sincerely, Abe David Lowell, counsel for Robert Hunter Biden. So, right, use the government to go after your political enemies. They've been doing it for a very long time. They raided Trump's house with the FBI. They have weaponized the FBI against, well, basically anybody who is an ultra mega MAGA Republican. Joe Biden declared that from the podium in front of his Gates of Hell speech. And so now, I guess if you're a member of the family of the president, you can just send a letter in. You can just hire lawyers and just send a request in and make your complaint. And you can also demand Tucker and his people respond in 24 hours, or else I guess maybe the federal government will get involved. Very scary, very pathetic stuff from the president's son, but about expected. And so, as I said, one final plug, please go over and support Marco Polo USA and visit them at marcopolousa.org. Now, let's turn our attention to some reaction to this. Now that we know that Hunter Biden is confirming the laptop is his lawyers are saying, yeah, it's mine, and we want you to stop sharing it. The question now becomes, should there be a further investigation of Hunter Biden specifically? We know that there were classified documents found in the president's garage. We know that Hunter Biden had access to the president's garage and presumably even lived there for a certain period of time. There were documents in several locations in Wilmington. They were at the Penn Biden Center. There are stories that even Hunter Biden was in the sort of the hierarchy, the org chart of people who might have been picking people to move certain boxes. We've got Hunter Biden emails that appear to be like copy and pastes from intelligence briefings. We heard that from Senator Ron Johnson. The list goes on and on. Now, Ted Cruz is going to come out and explain. Maybe a further investigation, a deeper dive is well worthwhile.
Well, look, the Alcoa email, he was asking Alcoa, pay me $55,000. Now, I want you to think, when was the last time you demanded of someone, give me 55 grand for what? For my insight on Russian oligarchs and their networks of elites in Russia.
He has no idea about any of that stuff unless he reads a classified document.
And he's pitching this to them. Now, listen, Hunter Biden doesn't know anything about this. He
No.
doesn't have any history or background in this, which means, at a minimum, he made a business out of selling access to Daddy, making millions of dollars to Daddy. But the inference from both of these emails, the obvious inference is that he's reading materials assembled for his father when he's the sitting vice president. And both of these materials, look, the intelligence agencies do assessments of Russian oligarchs, of the networks of elites. What he's offering to sell is exactly the type of material that is contained in classified briefings. And we will know that.
And Ron Johnson, the senator, even said it looked like that, right? When you read the email, and we read through that here last week, maybe, the actual email, I think it was I don't even remember the date on it, but it was weird. It was very, very concise. It read like an intelligence briefing. I mean, I haven't read a lot of those, but it sort of looked like a very condensed, nicely consolidated book report about very complex issues. And you say, that's kind of weird. It kind of looks like a very concrete intelligence briefing. And where did Hunter get all that information? I don't think that's on Wikipedia.
This special counsel, on the plus side, this special counsel, Robert Hur, was a former clerk to Chief Justice William Rehnquist. That's encouraging. Chief Justice Rehnquist was my former boss. That's encouraging. On the negative side, this special counsel was the right hand to Rod Rosenstein and also to Chris Wray. That raises real concerns about his involvement in the Russia hoax and the abuses from the deep state going after Donald Trump. And it really will be, the proof will be in the pudding. If he is willing to examine the evidence, I believe the FBI needs to search the documents at the University of Delaware, and it needs to search Hunter Biden's home and business addresses to see if there are classified documents at any of those places.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? I mean, do they trust Hunter? Have they seen the laptop? Like, has the Department of Justice seen the same laptop that we've seen and that the Polo USA.org team has assembled in a great report over there. I'm not sure that they have or not. Now, this is more than just Hunter Biden. Of course, Hunter Biden was the bag man for Joe Biden. He was the person who was trading on the name, peddling the influence, getting paid $80,000 a month or whatever it was. He's now complaining to the people in charge to go fix all of his exposure. But it's not just about Hunter Biden, right? This has never just been about Hunter Biden having a problematic past and making money in nefarious ways. It was about collusion and about corruption, more specifically, between Hunter and the power structure, the people who are in charge, in this case, the President of the United States of America. And so when Hunter is implicated, it's implicating Joe Biden. And so we ask ourselves about what the White House has to say about this, because if Hunter Biden was selling information that he got from classified documents, maybe that's why Joe Biden was bringing those documents home, even though he said himself it was irresponsible to do that. So the White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, is on his way out. They've decided to swap him out for somebody else who probably is going to be worse than him. Zients, who said that we're all going to suffer a winter of severe illness and death, that guy is now going to be swapping in here. But Ron Klain finished his last day. He sat down with MSNBC, and whoever this guy is, asked him about the Biden document scandal. Here's Ron.
Ron, obviously the news of the day is another document search, this time at the president's beach house. FBI and apparently the Biden lawyers say nothing was found this time. When did the FBI request the search that was conducted today?
Look, the president's been very clear. He's been working with lawyers, with the FBI, to make all of his residences available. They were able to search through every single inch and room and drawer of his home in Wilmington.
Did they go through Jill's closet like they did Melania's?
They requested the opportunity to search his beach house as well. They've done that. As you said, no documents with classified markings were found in that house. The hallmark of our handling of this has been cooperation with the Justice Department, with the archives in the first instance, to make them aware. They didn't ask for documents from us, President.
They didn't even know they were there because Joe Biden wasn't supposed to take them. So they're trying to draw these distinctions between Biden and Trump, but they are not the same.
And his legal team said, hey, we found some of these documents. We've been cooperating fully, and today's was just the latest example of that cooperation.
Yeah, and they didn't tell us about that either. The media busted them. They're hiding outside of Joe Biden's residences now. They're watching him when he's walking off the helicopter, seeing if those classified materials are going to escape down one of his pant legs and pop out into the sky. So Ron is on his way out, but again, he adds nothing to this. And honestly, this may be part of the reason he is being exited, or he is exiting because of this catastrophe. Some people are noticing that timing, saying, oh, it's very convenient that he's abandoning ship as the ship is seemingly sinking. Now, it also goes over to the White House. Of course, we always like to check in with Karine Jean-Pierre. And the media asks her about some of the statements that we've covered here from Karine that have been not honest or not open, not accurate, more specifically. Like this one, where she told us that the search was completed. Now, we're going to go through this one. Some of these I think might be fair. Some of these might be unfair. But Karine has lied, in my opinion, to us multiple times. Some directly, some by omission. The RNC went through, gathered all of the different times that Karine has said the search was completed. It's very interesting that she said those things because, as we learned yesterday, the searches were not completed. The searches were continuing on. But you can get sneaky with words here, okay? When Karine says the search is clearly complete. Was she talking about the search of one location? That's what she would say. I would say, well, that's not what the question was, Karine. The question was about the search for documents, the full universe. Is the search of Biden done? Like the whole thing, all of it done. Is the search complete? She said, well, the search of the Wilmington residence was complete. The search of the Penn Biden Center was complete. I wasn't talking about Rehoboth. I wasn't talking about Hunter Biden's ex's house over there in wherever. This is Karine Jean-Pierre saying repeatedly the search for the Biden documents was complete, even though, as we know, they weren't.
The search is clearly complete. They completed the search. The search is complete. He is confident in this process. You should assume that it's been completed, yes.
Nope, hasn't.
After the search concluded last night,
Didn't.
that search was completed last night.
Yeah, but there were many other searches that were going on. In fact, they just did one without telling us. So the search was not actually completed. It may have been completed at one location, but not in all the locations. And so with that as one example of many, there are many more, the media asks her about this. Karine, and they're very nice and kind to her. They say, Karine, why have you been so inaccurate up here? Whereas other people might say, why are you lying to us day after day, Karine?
Thank you. I have two questions, one about the documents case and one about the Tyree Nichols funeral. On the documents case, one of the features of the early public narrative of this episode that has kind of already taken root is the reporting to the effect that statements from this podium at different points later proved to be inaccurate. And without expecting you to delve into the details, because we all know that you cannot from the podium, I nonetheless wonder if you could simply assure us that you challenge that element of this narrative, that you are satisfied personally with the accuracy of all of the information that you've dispensed from this podium.
So, James, look, I'll say at this podium, I will always follow the guidance of the White House Counsel Office when it comes to ongoing investigations. We've been very we've been very clear about just ongoing investigations that is led by the Department of Justice, making sure that they have their independence. This is something that the president has talked about through the campaign and through the last 2 years. I have been consistent about that. When I have made statements from this podium on this investigation, it was at the guidance of the counsel's office and consistent with what they have said and wanted to communicate at the time, right? And I have said this, the White House Counsel's office has said this. One of the reasons we try not to comment on this is because it's changing, right? It is currently under investigation. And when you have a legal matter, as you know, I know you understand this, things change and things move very, very quickly. And so I've continued to provide the information that I have had at the time, and I will continue to do that.
Non-answers from Karine, womp womp. So the media wants to know now, right? They're actually sort of calling her a liar without calling her a liar. It sounds like they're asking, why were your statements inaccurate? Why are you lying? If we know that you told us this, like the searches were complete and they weren't complete, should we trust the other things that come out of your mouth? Are those also going to be inaccurate? And she says, well, it's a good question. Don't call me a liar, call the White House counsel a liar, because I can't take it. So that is what the White House is saying about all of this. Of course, we're going to continue to follow this document scandal. It is going to be big. We've got some very interesting things that I'm sure will be revealed to us. And one very interesting super chat just came in while we're here. Says everyone should read the October 23rd, 2012 email from Hunter's laptop, I'm sure, with a subject line that says, VP is in a good place now. Beat Romney in debate or the election, ? So that was a dono that came in from Jonah and says there's an interesting email spreading around out there that is worth looking into. So take a look at that one. Of course, we will continue to cover this stuff. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching it. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next one.